So wait, what does he do?
So he like will go on spiritual journeys.
Okay.
Like he will go on, like it was to like a horse graveyard.
Okay.
And
It's in Japan.
In Japan.
Okay.
And just basically then use this like, I don't 100% understand the recording techniques, but like use like contact mics and stuff to like capture the true spirit of the area. And it's just, I mean, that's the weird thing about like ambient music or field recordings. Like what makes a good one from a bad one is it's so clear. You're like, this is the best music ever, but it's not always like that dividing, like putting your thumb on it is not, I don't have the descriptive vocabulary to put my thumb on it.
Don't you feel like some of it has to do with like the sort of randomness, like the sort of unpredictability, like in the sense that like if you think about like William Basinski, like his Basinski, I don't know how you say his name, his recordings where the tape was like actually like deteriorating.
Yeah,
it's like
disintegration loops. Yeah,
you can't like, I don't know, like that's kind of just like some randomness that happened and then it worked. So, I don't know, putting yourself in a good place with this good randomness, I don't know, something that AI can't do, which will be
I mean, or it will be able, I mean, do we unclear
this is the answer, but it does touch on the topic we're going to be discussing today. Yes, we're back. Money for Nothing. I'm Saxon Baird with Sam Backer, as always, the podcast about music and capitalism. Sorry for our lull. Life got in the way a bit. But we're back, and we sent you some newsletters along the way.
Some provocative newsletters.
A little back and forth and everything. So we didn't go completely dormant. But yeah, we're going to come at you with a couple of episodes to end of the year. And today we are going to be talking about AI and music again, after maybe like a kind of like slight, I don't know, lull in the AI music space, kind of.
I mean,
music and litigation. The end of the year has definitely brought like a number of like kind of like real advancements, I guess, in this space, including an entirely created AI top country song, and also some settlements, but also business partnerships between majors and AI music startups. After like this kind of initial wave of like lawsuits that were brought by the majors against like startups like Suno and Udio, which I actually just realized is just audio without the A, which is so fucking dumb.
That makes me want to hurt myself.
Yeah, these are the people
that
forming.
Hurts me. That's the worst. That's the worst news I've heard today so far.
Considering all the news that hit last night, that's pretty surprising. It was a pretty gnarly set of news.
Well, that's why I didn't say lately. I said today, and then I said, given that I had a burst pipe, I said so far.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Damn, crazy day for news headlines, which we will not be talking about. But so yeah, notably also that at least like one AI artist since November, which isn't that far away, but has debuted in each of the past 6 charts, AI Billboard charts. Basically a streak that, you know, maybe is suggesting a sort of that this sort of acceleration, this advancement
is AI the new hip hop?
Oh yeah, actually scratch that. We're not talking about AI. We're talking about how hip hop's dead. Should we just do that instead?
I just do the entire different, like just an audible, or
but it's
audible. Audible, I think is how audible.
Oh god. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of things we want to touch on. We want to touch on these like settlements and then partnerships with major labels and these AI music generated startups or AI music generating startups. And then we also want to talk about this country AI song that hit #1, but then also just sort of like the prevalence of AI in popular music. And then kind of like also, I think we're beginning to sort of see the sort of concretizing of like what AI in popular music and like the vision of these major labels.
Yeah, what it might actually look like.
Yeah, what it actually like look like and sound like. And in the case of Blanco Brown, it's just apparently stealing a black artist's vocals and putting it into an AI generated like white country singer. But anyways, we'll get to that. But before we dive into that, maybe just like a little bit of background, a little refresher. Sam, like what were these like what were the major labels suing about, and like what were some of the major talking points, and like who are they suing, and then we can kind of dive into how that's been resolved, and in some ways actually hasn't been resolved with especially in particular with Warner and Suno.
Yeah, it's a lot. First of all, we gotta start, firm.
Wait, let's start with Montreal.
Firm. No. That's a firm hip check to the hype. It's very important to note that while there was a AI country song that topped a chart, that chart was hot new. It was country like iTunes digital downloads, which, dear listener, when was the last time you downloaded a single from the iTunes music store, or just like the digital download music store, most of which is iTunes?
Thank you.
Right?
Yes, this is the common problem with these headlines, is that like actually when you dive into it, it's like, oh yeah, probably like 144 downloads made it number one, which actually in 2026, the new goal of Money for Nothing will be to create a actual country hit via AI and make it number one. Anyways, moving on.
I mean, look, we can do it. That would be like in the spirit of
the KLF.
In the spirit of the KLF, but also, yeah, in the spirit of that incredible Planet Money series. Remember when they did that a couple times? They like made a shirt from the beginning. They're like, we want to understand how to make a shirt. So like they did it. They rented a factory.
Talk about my boy Kai Rizdal?
No, that's Marketplace. That's Marketplace and the greatest of all time. Yeah. So anyway, okay. But we will be talking about the aesthetics of that fake country music hit and a lot of other things. Country music, as always, like early adopters to new tech.
I would also say that, like, yeah. Well, anyways, okay, yeah. Let's get into like what has changed in kind of like the last like whatever 4 to 6 months.
So, we haven't covered AI in music for a little while because when you're so far ahead of a conversation, sometimes it's worthwhile to let everyone else in the world catch up. That's a joke, but like not that much of a joke, because a lot of what we're seeing now is in some ways was fairly predictable.
Yeah.
And it was fairly predictable based on kind of early moves that the major labels have been making, and we talked about them, I think, at the beginning of the year, but also kind of early, if you just look at their recent history of how the major labels have kind of carried themselves and the kinds of strategies that they've employed really since the digital revolution in the music industry, right? And the ways in which that they have kind of reconstituted themselves as IP holders, and IP holders with enormously valuable leverage as a result of their very centralized IP. And that, so in many ways, what we're seeing is the Spotify playbook just run again. Mm-hmm. So
sue them first, and then make them come to the negotiating table.
Sue them first, make them come to the negotiating table, make them sign, in that process, unclear, opaque deals with large settlements that are never publicly revealed, various kinds of payout structures based on those settlements that aren't exactly clear, and then licensing agreements that basically chain you to them for as long as they want to have you. I'm not saying that that's exactly what's happening, but I am saying that's exactly what's happening.
It's like, for some reason, the major labels like business dealings is like with these like new technologies has been like based on like Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, I mean, what I like to believe though is that like the music industry is currently like they're just playing a mediocre hand incredibly well, and every couple years like a new massively like Wall Street and or venture fund backed company comes in, and they're like, tech disruption is going to transform all things, it's going to transform everything, and you know that's going to be the future of the world. And the music labels are like, Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely, buddy. You're buying this next round of drinks? Cool. And then just like kind of play them a little bit. It's sort of a thing of beauty. Okay, but let's get down to specifics. Because there are some interesting like intricacies in all of this, at least from where I'm sitting. So basically, the two big generative music companies. There are more platforms and more tools, but the two most famous public-facing ones, right? So basically, large, well-funded companies with real amounts of users, real amounts of income, real public awareness, real brand names are. And I just like the aesthetics of these names really speak for the whole venture itself. Suno and Udio. I find these two names so hard to keep track of, like which one is Suno and which one is Udio.
Yeah, completely like opaque, like abstract names that mean nothing.
Yeah, with lots of U's and it's just rough. So both of them got sued, and they got sued because what they 100% did by the major labels, by all three of the major labels, because what they 100% did was like buy or illegally download huge amounts of copyright protected music and then use that as training data for, and potentially use it, especially if it's with the metadata, and God knows where they got the metadata, which is its own probable copyright violation. Use that to train these audio generating engines, right? Which do text to audio output. So you describe a thing, maybe put some lyrics, and you get a song. You've probably played with these by now. By the way, we now have at least a little bit of data on that, like stolen or downloaded, in that a recent report from Billboard suggested that since January 2024, Suno spent over $32 million training its models. That breaks down to $32 million spent on computing power and $2,000 spent on, quote, data costs, which means, again, according to Billboard, the cost of content like music used to train its model. So that's $32 million of computers and $2,000 of CDs. Just, like, so you definitely, like, you didn't even like buy it all and then like train on it. Like, you spent anyway. Like, I spent more on music since 2024. Maybe not quite, but like like comparable.
Like, well, if you consider concerts that you went to, and
yeah,
like maybe merch,
it's not an order of magnitude different than how much money they spent.
It's like $500 difference. Yeah.
Okay, so these have been lawsuits. Other lawsuits are kind of working their way through. There's arguments on both sides. Is this transformative to the work of art? Basically, if that is the argument, that this is a transformation of a piece of art, and that is why they are allowed to do this, then Andy Warhol really will have killed art. Because that some of those transformational laws are based on Andy Warhol.
Jesus.
Lawsuits, right? Where he's like, I'm doing something different to it. I like took a picture of it and printed it out.
Right.
Anyway, okay, so, and there are other Anthropic recently settled. They're big lawsuits for a variety of different companies. But in the way of such things, very rarely these days do these large industry-shaking lawsuits actually end up being like decided by the Supreme Court. Right. What actually happens is they're all used as like battles for position by the different players in these industries. Yeah, exactly. And then they're used to settle in some sort of mutually advantageous way. Or, the battle lines are drawn in a way that like they feel is somewhat advantageous. Of course, if you're not part of the large-scale collectivities making these deals, your interests tend to be less well represented by this system. So like, pour one out for the little guys. Okay, so that's how it stood for a while with these big honkin' lawsuits. And like, just to be clear, like when you are training AI, like you make tons of copies of stuff. So these were like, if they were ever if the worst case happened for these companies and they were fined on like a per copyright infringement basis, like this is just like, it's overs. It's oversville.
Yeah.
So in the last couple months, kind of surprising no one, especially as every major label, kickstarted by Daddy Lucian Grange, has as of the last like year been like, our policy on AI is creative interpenetration between fans and artists and creatives and record companies, in which individuals' human creativity is not challenged but furthered by their engagement with the technology, blah, 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 blah.
Artist first.
Artist first. So they've all
strengthening the relationship between the fans and the artist. Like, God, how many times have I read that? Like, it's like, are all the fans just gonna move in? Like, what's that? What is happening?
They just like all hang out. Yeah.
The way they talk about it is as if like there's no passive music listening. It's like everybody is just like locked in 23 hours a day to like their favorite artist. Like it's like it's really wild. Anyways,
well, that's the people they want, but that's maybe a different story. So given like the history of all these companies, what happens next maybe isn't that much a surprise, which is they start to settle, and they start to settle in interesting ways. So there's a kind of flurry of deals. And it's interesting because usually in the jockeying between the three major labels, like they have a fairly united front, but there's actually a little bit of splintering here. And maybe this is just like, it's all in the process of getting wrapped up. All the three have made deals with people at different rates, right? At different times. There's moments, there was that minute when like Warner, right? Like sometimes one will have a debate with Spotify and the other two will be fine. But so basically, the two main companies, Suno is much bigger than Udio. It's got more income, it's got more users. So Warner, the smallest of the three major labels, has signed deals with both Suno and Udio. And in particular has formed like a partnership deal, somewhat unclear partnership deal in which they'll license a lot of their material with Suno. They just kind of settled with Udio. Sony is still suing both of them. And I guess is playing like unclear what will happen, like maybe you get more leverage. Universal, the biggest of the three major labels, has signed its closest deal with Udio, the smallest of the generating AI music generating things.
Or like the smaller between you.
But yeah. Between Suno and Udio.
There's hundreds of them.
Because there's millions of them, and they're all great, right? So what this means basically, I think, and the details of these deals are very opaque. And in that, as we were gesturing before, they remind me a lot of the black box deals that Spotify signs with the majors going forward.
It feels like a really, good comparison here.
Unclear how long the deal is for, right?
Right.
Which potentially means like, and the licensing is unclear, right? Like, so it wouldn't surprise me if, given the fact that these companies, for the tech companies, right, for Suno and Udio, these deals are the way forward. They need to get these deals. If they're forever in litigation with the major labels, their companies are not going to survive. Yeah. Or at least not going to
with Spotify.
Yeah, they're not going to thrive, right? They're going to be weird. It's going to be constantly like, they want to go legit. They want to be integrated into the mainstay of the music ecosystem. That is the goal, right? The only way to do that is through major label deals.
And the reason by that is because that gives them access to all of the all of the music catalogs that allow them to train their data on. Train their platforms on.
Or some of it, right? Again, we don't know what kind of access the deals are in this.
But nonetheless, they have access, and it's like legal, or there's a partnership.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's possible that artists are going to be allowed to opt in and opt out on their own volition, like huge air quotes on own volition, because surely, Saxon, a major label would never try to force its artists to do anything that the artist didn't want to do. Right?
No, I mean, the major labels are pretty much just like whatever Chris Martin wants, they'll do.
Yeah. Right. But also, and certainly, for a fact, major labels have never put like not ideal terms into the contracts that they sign with emerging or young artists, right?
Never.
Not a single time, ever, one time. So I don't see what the problem is here. No, obviously, like, there's a whole discourse about that the major labels are going to be, give the artists freedom to do this or not do this. But, like, who knows? Like, that's a complicated relationship between major labels and the artists they either are signed to them or distributing to them in these increasingly opaque deals. And maybe, you can imagine as a proviso of being distributed in a closer artist distribution relationship with the major labels that you get access to, you have to license your music to these AI companies, or even like, oh, it'll be good for you because there's 1 million rappers. And so like, if you want your hit right, you can imagine how this goes. We don't know what kind of settlement is happening. We don't know where the settlement money is going. Now, note that this is another classic major label thing, that they have value because they have all of this IP collected, but they don't make all that IP. But the money that they get from selling access to all of that bundled IP, they do just get to keep. So who knows what kind of stake or what kind of payout they're getting, and who knows if it's distributed back to the artists. Sometimes it is, maybe some of it, but very unclear. And then
that's the reason to keep it under wraps about these kind of things and keep them opaque.
Yeah, what kind of payouts, what kind of licensing? If I would not be surprised, and this is me totally speculating, but just given my sense of how good the majors tend to be at this game, that they're both going to have fairly short licensing agreements. A year, couple
so
years.
Reevaluate later.
So you can reevaluate, and that the licenses for all the music that everyone is making is going to be tied. Like, once you know that this is AI music based on X, Y, or Z, it'll go dead if that licensing agreement lapses, right? So that like the additional music that is being generated based on major label contributions, they're going to link it in some way. They're going to still have control over it. Yeah, so that users are building out more major label catalog for them, for not just for free, paying to do it.
Basically, what you're saying is that after let's say the contract goes dead between Universal and Udio, any of the content that was created during that partnership would then be owned by Universal.
So I don't know.
But that's your speculation.
That is my speculation, is that these are the kinds of things that Universal is going to be doing. And I think it's even more the sense of the power relationship. I think for me, the particularly indicative detail is that Universal, by far the biggest label, has this very close deal with Udio, which is by far the smallest of the two music generation sites. Which means that the leverage there is going to be the most significant. And basically Universal is saying we don't like Suno, but we do think that you, Udio, we can we can make you big based on our IP, but then you're going to owe us. And in particular, this the second the deal was done, Udio stopped allowing its users, even its paid users, to download their AI generated material.
Right.
Which is like actually probably a violation of contract. Like there was these like
between the users and
between the
Udio.
users, between the users and Udio. Like there was this very like frustrated high school teacher who was like, I bought a license so that my students could like make music for their student films in high school, and I'm very frustrated.
Well, that just means the students got a lesson in like the music business instead.
Or like the students like form bands.
Learn an instrument,
students. Like,
or not even learn an instrument. Learn like, I don't know, Fruity Loops.
Yeah, just like illegally put the shins on your high school music, on your high school made videos, just like everyone else does. Like, just steal music from the shins.
Caveat: we are not suggesting to do this.
Yeah.
Parody.
So yeah, parody. So that's been the deal right now. Unclear if things to watch in terms of just like the actual details of the deal are like is this actually sorry. Things to watch is like, will Udio things to watch are like, will Universal actually make a deal with Suno? Like, we don't know. It might, but
that's
a big question.
What moves will Sony make? What kind of deals will they strike?
And when will this kind of the rollout of Universal and Warner based licensing on Udio actually make it more successful? Like, they've got to deliver. That doesn't seem particularly implausible to me, but like, it has to happen. So that's kind of the lay of the 50,000 feet lay of the land here. But what's also interesting.
Meanwhile, while this is happening,
but what's also, but before we totally move on, it's also interesting. We're getting a little sense of like what they imagine these new music platforms looking like, and poor Spotify just getting like stabbed in the front after all it's done for the music industry. But yeah, basically like from the record industry's perspectives. So they're imagining this as what they call, I doubt it'll happen exactly, but a quote unquote closed ecosystem of music expansion.
Walled garden is actually the way they put it.
Basically saying like, this is going to be a music generated and generating fan and social media space. And like the expectations, at least from the folks in the industry, are very high. Suno, at least their exec, believes that Suno will, quote, power the new, bigger music ecosystem, eventually becoming a $500 billion company.
My God.
So that would be
propaganda of these companies.
That would be, like a truly huge corporation. Would exist, I guess, as just part of a incredibly enormous music ecosystem is absolutely ridiculous. They it is kind of interesting though, is like thinking about this kind of AI creator community that they're imagining, because you could then imagine, right, if it's all in this box. Question is like, how big does this box get? Like, could you then license that box to Facebook? I don't see why not. You could. Facebook has done like integration of third-party services previously. They could again, which would mean like all internal,
AI generated,
all traceable music on Instagram and Reels,
right?
Which is where the money's at. You could do this with TikTok, right? Like, so you could imagine how you'd have this kind of.
Well, in some ways, it might even also kind of solve some of the problems that the major labels like have with these social platforms when it comes to like copyright infringement. I mean, like it was earlier that like what was it, Universal and TikTok had like a kind of like standoff. Was it last year? Yeah, I guess it was last year.
It was last year.
Yeah, a standoff about that, and apparently like pulled all their music, and like users on TikTok like couldn't use like a Taylor Swift song or something like that. And it's like in a way, this could possibly solve that, where like why you may not be able to get like an actual like Taylor Swift song, you can get a Taylor Swift-esque song that is generated through the partnership of Udio and one of the major labels, and use that for your reel, and everybody's happy except for the actual artists themselves, of course. But who knows? Maybe they might even get some sort of kickback. Probably unlikely, but but I mean, it is interesting how that connection, where that was maybe a problem with like the usage of copyright with a platform like TikTok, now there is an opportunity for that to be partially solved for these majors.
Yeah, and it I think in a kind of Netflixy way, right? By making it really easy to use these tools on these sounds with these sets of payouts, what you're doing is incentivizing everyone who's a casual user to use the major label music to the exclusion of everyone else who maybe they'll license, but like there's no way Merlin is getting as good a deal, and no way like the indies are getting as good a deal on all this. And
they may also might be the most vulnerable because in all of this.
Yeah,
because
totally.
Clearly like their contracts and their weight and their resources and being able to like, I don't know, pull together like a team of lawyers to like fight something like this is like a lot.
And just their leverage,
like,
right?
Less strong.
Because you can't do an AI remix of Britney Spears saying like "Hit Me Saxon one more time," which I believe is the promise of all of this. That is why we're doing this. But the really pulling out the dark subtexts of that that song. What's also interesting is all of that, the whole thing about the walled garden, is what they also want is they want, as far as I can tell, real segregation between AI fan-generated music and recorded music by human artists. I actually think that's one of the most interesting things about this. This system, it seems to me, works much better for the major labels if there is, let's take Nicki Minaj as an example. Right, even though she's come out against all kinds of stuff lately.
Yeah,
but she's also come out against AI music,
right.
and you know, just thinking about the Barbs as a particularly intense fandom. The overall ecosystem, right? Like what you want is, you don't want AI generated near Nicki raps clogging up Spotify, of like people that are like maybe Nicki, maybe not, maybe real, maybe not. And like that reducing the quality of how many streams Nicki gets, or clouding that any more than needs to be. People really don't like the AI slop, but they might want to be able to customize Nicki Minaj's voice and interests, like, and vibe, like, in their own social fan community. So by keeping it this walled garden, what you can do is say music by humans on Spotify, music on AI, by AI on these AI fan platforms, and notice both of them, while they don't want quote-unquote cannibalization, both of them are weaker, right? If there's all of this music activity that's happening via AI-generated songs on the fan platform licensed walled garden thing, Spotify has less leverage, and vice versa. If they don't have the real hits, if it's all downstream from the quote-unquote real hits, like the AI music sites also have less leverage. And the music industry...
What do you mean Spotify doesn't have the real hits?
No, sorry. So AI music doesn't have the real hits. Spotify doesn't have the fan engagement because there's listening elsewhere. Both of them are weakened, and the music industry can like continue to be gangsters, basically, like nice business you have here. Business you have here. Shame if anything happens to it.
Right, but I mean, I think that like there's a large assumption like that the fans would be. Why do you feel like the fans would be engaging on these like AI like sites where they can remix and like create music that like, I mean, that seems like a small niche of fans who'd be interested in doing that. Also, I question about how much like is this walled garden actually going to work, because there's so many just like individual 2-3 person whatever, like producers, AI startups that are creating music like on and putting it on. I mean, this whole what is it, Breaking Rust, is that was the name of it?
Yep.
Yeah, so like Breaking Rust is basically the country music artist, AI artist that had like that number one
replicant. We have a word for these. They're replicants.
Yeah, this AI country music replicant that essentially got number one on one of the charts, one of the very specific niche like country charts, and yeah, I mean they're on Spotify, so how are you gonna stop that? Like, you could stop. And basically, like, the idea was that apparently, like, the Breaking Rust was based off of like this other artist's voice, who apparently, I guess, is not on a major label or whatever, and like hasn't been able to sue or has chosen not to sue. I don't know what I read about that. And like, it seems like the one question I had is like, why is he not suing them? And it seems like none of the articles were answering that question. But the point being is that like, how do you stop that? Like, how do you stop these sort of like one-off AI generated replicants like from getting on Spotify? So I don't think the walled garden is like kind of
it's a fantasy.
Yeah,
but the question is why? Like, why? Given what we know about like the internet, the question is like why, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so one of it is, I think, by creating a legalized. One of the things I think we've learned from the history of piracy, the recent history of digital piracy, is piracy, and like, again, also air quotes, but is that if you create a easy, legal, paid pathway, not only can you redivert a lot of the activity, but you can incentivize certain types of activities that benefit like the powers that be in the music industry. So it means that if you make a good legal pathway, everyone who's doing it the wrong way, to quote, Sublime, is,
as we're always doing, and forever will be.
Everyone who's doing it the wrong way, like, the hammer can come down on them, and everyone who's doing it the right way can be valorized, and you can push them in certain directions. And so it doesn't actually have to be a complete walled garden, but I think you can get a surprising number of people if you just make it pretty easy and potentially more easy to monetize via the acceptable routes versus the unacceptable routes, right? Most of the people who are making... So
you're saying that, yeah, so basically what you're saying is like, this is Breaking Rust. I mean, he has like whatever, like 9 million plays on him. The Replicant has 9 million plays on their top song on Spotify, which has probably made them peanuts, knowing the payout situation in Spotify.
Yeah, like some money, but like...
Yeah, not enough to sustain the whatever small like startup company that it came out of, or producers or whatever the hell, whoever the hell it was. And you're saying that like, if maybe the payouts are better and it's easier to monetize within like the walled garden, quote unquote, of like a Udio, then that's, people are going to go where the money is.
Yeah, and meanwhile, what you can start doing then is cracking down on. Oh, sorry, what?
No, I was thinking. I was like, so what you're saying is that somehow, like in the near not so far future, Udio will somehow be able to position itself as the more ethical streaming service.
Yeah. Wow. Except for the water usage.
Yeah. Fuck. Jesus Christ. Okay, anyways, continue.
One of my friends was talking about. We were talking about a different friend was writing. Was reading like this really long, involved fantasy book series, and she's like, I don't know if I can finish it. And a different friend was like, you could just ask like AI to like generate you a synopsis. And our third friend like interject. He's like, or you could just like ask a dude and he will happily tell you the entirety of the plot of the book, and he won't have to drink a whole glass of water.
Yeah, good point.
And I was like, yeah, you're right. The dude, you'll make his day if you ask him about his knowledge of a.
Damn, that's true. That's true.
So yeah. The other thing, though, I think that this might help folks deal with, right? Thinking about now, I don't know if this is actually going to be successful, but I could imagine this does seem like it's where the music industry wants to go, and I do think that given the power of this, I think this could actually be attractive to folks.
It's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe another way to put it is to put like this is like satisfactory for them in like the near future. We're like, let's like see how this goes. We'll make probably, like I said, the details are like not clear. They're not public, but like, let's make a short-term deal. Let's try this out. Let's see where it goes. Cause this is like one option that is like not completely disadvantageous to us and the artists we represent.
And clearly what they're not ever doing again is the Napster move, where you sue Napster, it comes down, but it opens Pandora's box, and you lose control of a generation of companies, basically, right? They'd much rather have you inside the tent pissing out, as the saying goes. Now the thing is, in talking about outside the obverse, right, outside the tent pissing in, because in this metaphor, everyone's got to pee. It's just, it's just
Bonnaroo, baby. It's Bonnaroo on the on the metaverse.
It's Bonnaroo on the metaverse,
but not the music, the actual camping part.
The flip side, though, is we're also, in terms of AI culture, and there's a couple different things that we've seen. So we're starting to see, and that's what's kind of tantalizing about this moment, is like little bits and pieces of the future. So one is this kind of like various kinds of like replicant nabbing, right? Just like, or replicant creation, right? Where you have kind of take someone's style and do it in a slightly different way. There's a lot of creepy blackface adjacent stuff of like various kinds of gospel music being created.
I mean, also we could just take the replicant reference that I keep mentioning with this like Breaking Rust, which is basically like this AI, this white AI. Well, how do you can't even call it like white presenting AI replicant because it's not real. Like I don't know how we're out.
No, he's not white presenting. Oh no, he is white presenting. He is white presenting.
No. Yeah. But anyways, the way that it was described in this article, a white digitally generated avatar.
What does that mean? Like,
yeah, what does that mean? Yeah, getting into the.
That's a complicated. Like, what is whiteness and digitally produced avatars? Is that's a whole
not for this podcast, but please dive in by all means. Yeah, but essentially like the
something
songs,
we're gonna have to deal with as a society. 100%, it's coming.
Yeah, which we're not thinking about. Right, exactly. So basically, but like apparently the vocal stylings and phrasing and melodic shape and blah 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 was like taken from this artist, a real Grammy nominated black country artist named Blanco Brown, who has been successful working with like Rihanna and people.
The Get Up is an incredible song.
Yeah. And yeah, essentially like it was generated, but this Breaking Rust was like generated by a guy that he had like actually worked with apparently.
Yeah.
So it's like weird like whitewashing or like whatever you want to say, like blackface kind of.
It's complicated.
Yeah, and as Brown has said publicly, like the AI generated man has what sounds more like a black voice and is essentially singing like it's a Negro spiritual. This is in Brown's own assessment. Yeah, this is a lot of complicated shit about to come our way. But nonetheless, what you're saying is that like you get this like these very weird avatar replicant
stuff
like ecosystem. Yeah.
So then thinking about the ecosystem, another thing that's clearly happening is I don't even know, digital squatting. Like, I feel like we're making up all kinds of terms, right?
Yeah, we're gonna kill it right now.
Digital squatting, right? Which
happens outside of the metaverse, the Monterey metaverse camping site.
Yes. So digital squatting is something we're starting to see. We've been seeing for a while. We saw it a little bit when Kristen Robinson came and talked with us about that absolutely insane story about like fake payment, like complicated illegal copyright theft in the like Mexican regional music community. Right. Insane, like lime green Lamborghini story. Go back and listen to that episode. But more generally, I think there's been a lot of digital squatting where basically like more or less scammers realize that you can, and no one of these will make you money, but if you make a ton of sort of weird off-brand placeholders and throw them all around streaming sites, you can actually make a decent amount of money. And this is throughout digital life. Like I ran into a bizarre thing.
Yeah, give an example though. More example. If I just make like a fake like Stephen Malcolmus like avatar sounding avatar, I'm not gonna make a lot of money. But if I make like 15 across different genres of like more popular artists, they could like create it.
So if you make a fake Stephen Malcolmus song, you put it up as Saxon Baird featuring Stephen Malcolmus. Put it on Spotify, tagging Stephen Malcolmus. Stephen Malcolmus's top most recently released song will be, unless he and his team take it down, will be your track, and you'll get, 40,000 streams before it gets taken down. And
Which isn't much, but if I do that, like, where you say if I do that, like, 100 times, then it's a decent amount of money.
Right. And AI lets you do that at scale.
Right.
Right? It lets you do a lot of it. So someone was putting up fake King, because King Gizzard pulled all their music off of Spotify, and someone put up a fake King Gizzard band called Wizard Lizard that was on Spotify that sounded like King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard, and was getting Wizard whatever whatever the name of that band is sounded like
that vibey band who's I could like
right, and sounded like them, and they make tons of albums, so plausibly could be them, and a little unclear, but yeah, so like harvesting that way. And so if you do that at scale, and this has been happening, there's reports of this elsewhere, like sometimes a long broken up band, they'll do this for, right? Like a band that hasn't released any music since 1995, and all of a sudden they have a new single, and sometimes it's not even like in that featuring version I did with you, they just put up a new single as that band and harvest those streams, and AI lets you do that pretty well, actually. Because especially in the paid versions, you can use a reference track. So you can be like, use these lyrics, sound like this song.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems like Spotify could probably put in place some like security measures where like it's simply like just side note, it seems pretty ridiculous. Like if you want to tag someone on Instagram, sometimes people have a security measure in which like they have to approve that tag. It seems like they should just do something like that. It's classic. Like, what are they doing over there in Sweden? Too many holidays. Anyways, okay.
No, totally. Or that they're figuring this out. But again, I think that this is going to be a problem throughout the broader set as AI expands. Right.
Right.
This kind of like halo of slop that's just going to like surround everyone real. Because you can make it look like them, you can make it sound like them, and maybe if you can garner a little bit of attention based on that, it's going to be everywhere. And so that is again one of the we're getting a little sense of like what this AI culture is going to be like, which maybe won't exist in the walled garden, or at least you'll know it's all AI.
Right? Like, yeah, exactly. Well, that's another interesting aspect of it. Is the walled garden will actually be like a space, a digital space in which we like actually understand what is fucking happening.
Yeah,
Like,
and that will be really
yeah.
valuable, actually. Being like,
Yeah,
this
and,
is
like, and
all
maybe
AI.
not- yeah. Right, exactly. Like, it's kind of like, oh, we know it's AI. It's interesting that like the way to understand like what's real and what isn't so much to like have something that determines what is real, but rather to have the opposite, which is to determine what isn't.
Whoa.
Within like a space. Yeah.
No, I think you're right, though. And to have it in some ways, I think, tied to real people. Like,
Right.
and again, this is all very
real
speculative.
people, quote unquote. I don't know how real these CEO tech people are.
No. But by real people, I mean like,
yeah, I'm joking. Users.
No. I mean, like, I'm just thinking about like the uncanny valley and how unpleasant it is. Like, breaking Rust is very weird. If you listen to that song, it's terrible, and it's terrible because it's just so pedestrian and so hackneyed. But like a version where you're like, no, it's Blanco Brown's voice, but we're having him do a different song, right? Or it's Mick Jagger's voice, and we're having him do a different song. In a way, it's like we know it's AI, but it's AI of a real thing versus like
just completely faking it. Like, I'm gonna create a whole
versus like something that's like it's AI of someone who looks kind of like Mick Jagger, and somehow that's more upsetting. I don't know. Maybe it's not, but I could see a world in which like you want there to be real things and an AI of them, rather than the more troubling universe of like, who's a replicant and who's not, if everyone's kind of replicants.
Yeah, there's a movie about this. It turns out Ridley Scott, even though he's publicly stated he didn't know what Blade Runner was about, now maybe knows what Blade Runner was about.
He's learned in the fullness of time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because honestly, like, just playing my role here as the dark cynic, but that feels like a more of a likely outcome where or maybe or like rather the outcome is that a generation of people come to adulthood not caring about whether or not so much it's real or not, and that becomes like less of a concern.
Yeah, no, that does seem like the most likely outcome, and that's why I think that these moves are like deliberately designed to, because that outcome actually is bad for the major labels.
Yeah, well, so once again, it's interesting to say that like this sort of these ideas around like gatekeepership and are in some way maybe gesturing towards a way of maintaining a like humanist grounding in all of this.
Yeah.
And then there's this weird way where it's like, oh, like the functions of old legacy companies within like a capitalist system are going to be the quote unquote saviors of a sort of humanist grounding. Good God.
Yeah, that's rough. That's
okay.
It's rough.
Don't jump out a window, people, please.
It's not great.
But no, but actually, but seriously, like, I mean, that was kind of like I
think that
looking into the crystal ball. But I mean, if we look at it within the context of the music industry, like who will be the ones that will maintain any kind of semblance of this so-called walled garden between like the onslaught of like AI slop music, or even like really well done AI music, and like the actual real artists themselves? And then like at this point, the like only guard of that is the major labels.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's because...
I mean, am I wrong?
No,
I mean, like, I would love to be challenged by this.
Distributors aren't there. The companies don't want to do anything. They are all looking for usership. They're all, like, the AI companies are all looking for usership.
The government is fucking completely behind.
Yeah, the companies are trying to do this as much as they can because they're all caught in a absolutely catastrophic race for market share. I mean, some of the stuff about like NVIDIA and OpenAI and like this, it reminds me of the railroads, where it's just massive overbuilding of capacity for competition, and we'll see like how much of this is useful capacity, given the fact that like depreciation and all this stuff is really fast. No, I agree. And so, I mean, that's one of the things about in this weird situation we found ourselves with the major labels, which are like, at least they are music companies, right? Like, they have some vested interest in music. But then again, if they've got the IP lock-ins, they don't need maybe living artists. Certainly, this is a major... If one of the stories of the last couple years has been the expansion of independent distribution and the sense that maybe the majors aren't as useful for upcoming artists, this seems to push against that logic significantly, right? In that you want these companies with enough leverage to help you, to push you through and into, first of all, like whatever like algorithmic suggestions the AI, social media, music walled garden functions through, right? So your song gets picked up as like a popular font for replication. And then, right. And yeah, just there's a sense of like independent, being an independent artist distributed independently in a world in which there's just like real AI piracy everywhere. Like you want to get yourself into the safety of that walled garden, maybe, at least so some of the popular replicants you're getting payout from them. So I could just see this as, again, just a massive increase in the power of the major labels and their power vis-a-vis their laborers, right? That if you're able to just keep making infinite number of Mick Jaggers, like the new up-and-coming band has less leverage.
And so that's what I was kind of like trying to mention one time in like a few newsletters ago, which I think maybe confused you, but then this is what which is fine. But like what I was trying to state, because what eventually this leads to, I think to me, is like how much do the consumers and listeners and users care, and like whether or not like they will demand real living human artist with a beating heart, and how much that matters to them.
Yeah, and I think some of that
I hold out. Yeah, I think it's generational, and I think in the short term, I think that still will matter. I think that who knows what happens in the long term.
The data on how, I mean, so like Spotify and these sites are getting absolutely flooded with AI music, but the amount, if any of that's actually being listened to, is incredibly low. So I think
right, but then also, but then also there's this. What I'm also saying, you know, and I've mentioned this before in previous episodes. I think that there's something about like that is external to the music itself that you know, Taylor Swift's relationship with whoever that fucking tight end is, like Jason Kelly, whatever, I don't fucking know his name, but like, you know, and like that interest is part and parcel to like a Swifties parasocial relationship with Taylor Swift. Right.
Yeah, and
so like and I think that like I think that like in the near future that still matters. I think that like in the long term 2,000 year future, who fucking knows, when we have like, you know, we actually do have like T1000s walking around like looking like Taylor Swift or whatever. Like, you know, maybe it doesn't matter. And like when you can actually have a concert where it looks like that's not just a hologram, but it looks like actual like real. Whatever. This is like way out there.
No. But
I think in the near future, for the sake of this episode, I think that like that still does matter. But then again, it's like, then you could consider the economic aspect of it and like how people, you know, and the bring in the aspect of like what's it now, like the top 10% of earners in America are like generating like 90% of consumerism or something like
50%
that.
of consumerism.
50, yeah, but still, where it's like if I can't afford to go to the concert, then I don't know, maybe that these kind of things become less important. But anyways,
I think you're right about that, and I do think that one of the things, like a trope of like the way humans experience the world is through generations, and this is a major thing with climate, with like biodiversity loss, right? Like. Mm-hmm. There's tons of butterflies when you're a kid, and then the butterflies kind of go away over the course of your life, and you're like, weren't there more butterflies when I was a kid? But everything looked different when you were a kid. And then your kid is like, oh, there were only this many butterflies ever, right? And so over 3 or 4 generations, you can go from there were so many butterflies to there are almost no butterflies, but no one person is there to really watch it and experience it.
Because we don't live that long enough, right?
And I do think that for some like media forms, like given the generation gap, given the complexity of the passage from childhood to adulthood, there are fleshed out forms that just like disappear that have amazing elements to them that later forms don't have, and vice versa, right? Short form video content might just be the greatest form of media. It's possible. It's like, but
they're transforming our brains.
Yeah. But it has things that a big multiplex has elements that it doesn't have, right? And so just like I could imagine that this is one of the things where like it's really upsetting for the generation seeing it lost, and the next generation is like, oh, everyone was always a replicant. Like that's how it's always been.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I'm constantly considering. I'm like that. I think that I think in the last couple of years doing this podcast and writing this newsletter with you, like this is something that I'm like continually, and like with especially with the last couple of years with like the just sudden, very present, the very growing presence of AI in like every part of our life, or a lot of parts of our life. There's also all these articles coming out about like AI writing all the essays for these like college classes and like what that means and all this stuff. And like I'm just thinking to myself the entire time, is the question is like, how much is this just normalized by like a quote unquote generation of people who are raised on this as just the reality, like that they're
and that's why this stuff matters. I think that's why these moments like right now really matter, because a version I think certain there's path dependency. I think is not it's the future's not always path dependent, but path dependency is real. And I do think that big dynamics are being kind of figured out right now. And so like, even if a chunk of stuff is in a walled garden, it'll look very different than if they sue these AI companies to oblivion, which they should.
And maybe right. And maybe this walled garden is like kind of just a prototype for something that comes after it.
And with that,
we'll put a pin in this one. Thanks for being patient and waiting for our next episode. We'll have another one out, an interview within a week or two's time. And continue to subscribe. Please subscribe to our newsletter. You can find it on our Substack, moneyfornothing.substack.com. That's the number 4.
Feel so inclined. It is possible to support us financially.
Yes.
We love doing this, but we live in a system of capitalism, believe it or not. And we have some donors and supporters, and they really make a difference. So if this show and this and the project and the newsletter are useful to you, consider dropping us a bone.
Yeah, even like $5 a month will go a long way to kind of help us maintain this. But we appreciate your listening and reading and Music by Bird Language, and we'll catch you soon. Bye.